Anthropologists initially expected the indigenous people of the Andaman Islands to be hit hard by the tsunami and even feared that the Onge and Sentinel tribes might be wiped out. The Andaman Islands are located right on a subduction fault, and the crust rupture took place a few kilometers west of these islands, laying in a belt of hundreds of islands and islets, 700 kilometers from south to north, separating the Andaman Sea from the Indian Ocean. The total number of islands is 572, but only a few are inhabited. On the Sentinel Island are living tribes that are still untouched by human civilization. In a new video, we'll talk about the impact of the tsunami on this area. Friends, welcome to a new video on the Top Topics channel. Although we have not included the story of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands until the third part of our series, the fact is that these islands were hit even earlier than the more southerly Indonesia due to the enormous proximity of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands to the source of the earthquake. Many eyewitnesses described they heard from the nearby depth of the Indian Ocean an ominous cracking and rumbling sounds as the ground began to shake and the water began to swirl and recede strangely from the shores, or the sea would heave. Scientists believe this was due to the distance of a major subduction fault just a few dozen kilometers west of the island's coastline, which was sinking and uplifting, causing massive underwater landslides, which later caused the huge mass of water to stir. The northern parts were hit relatively weakly by a wave about 1 meter high. Scientists explain this by the fact that in the north, the crust was breaking in very shallow water and was thus unable to generate larger waves. The greater the depth of the sea, the higher the column of the uplifted water mass, and the stronger the tsunami effect. As the depth progresses southwards along the subduction fault, the damage to the islands becomes more noticeable and dramatic. On the island of South Andaman, according to local eyewitnesses, 3 tsunamis occurred, the third being the most destructive. Severe flooding occurred on the coast and in the low-lying areas inland, which were connected to the open sea by streams. Severe flooding was observed on the west, south, and east coasts of the island. Many buildings close to the coast and numerous infrastructure such as boat jetties and the 20 megawatt diesel power plant at Bamboo Flat were destroyed. Heights of the waves on the island reached up to 7 meters. A wave, height of approximately 10 meters, hit Sentinel Island and Little Andaman. As these islands are flat and gentle hills are located within the island, scientists feared that the wave was fatal to the local wild Sentinel and Onge indigenous tribes. The more surprising was, the most of the inhabitants survived the tsunami unscattered. In fact, many of the natives of these tribes evacuated deep inland in time. Oral traditions passed down from generation to generation, which had their origins in previous earthquakes, helped the indigenous tribes escape. The old myth of the Onge tribe, in fact, speak of an ancient, tremendous earth tremor, the disappearance of the ocean, followed by a high wall of water. This oral tradition was crucial for the survival of these tribes. These tribes were therefore much more resilient to the tsunamis than people of modern civilization who didn't understood these signs of the sea and went to curiously explore the seabed, which was a fatal mistake that usually cost them lives and was the most common cause of death of foreign tourists in Thailand. The waves did even more damage to the more southerly laid Nicobars. In Malacca, located on the island of Car Nicobar, a total of 3 tsunami waves hit. Witnesses observed how the sea literally rose suddenly while the tremors were still occurring, then dropped rapidly, and the first wave came within 5 minutes of the tremors and flooded the coastline. This was followed by a huge sea retreat of up to 600 to 700 meters. The second and third waves came in at 10-minute intervals after the first wave. The third wave was the strongest, with a maximum tsunami wave height of 11 meters. Waves nearly 3 stories high devastated an Indian Air Force base located south of Malacca. The waves inundated an area up to 1.25 kilometers inland. The impact of the waves was so strong that 4 oil tankers were thrown almost 800 meters off the coast near Malacca. The tsunami reached Chakchach and Lapati in a cycle of 3 waves with a maximum wave height of 12 meters. The worst affected island in the Andaman and Nicobar Island chain is Ketchel Island, where 303 people have been confirmed dead and 4,354 missing out of a total population of 5,312. The significant shadowing of Port Blair and Campbell Bay by steep mountain spurs contributed to relatively low wave heights in these locations, while the open terrain along the east coast in Malacca and Hut Bay contributed to large wave heights in excess of 12 meters. The devastation of the southern Andaman and Nicobar Islands was immense. Many smaller islands were displaced by tens of meters. The islands suffered from the proximity of the earthquake itself, with faults passing in nearby waters. Many villages were completely destroyed, and the total number of victims there is several thousand. However, many bodies of the deceased were never found, so casualties are only estimated. However, the waves were already spreading unstoppably in westerly direction, and they were moving in the depth of the ocean with a speed of up to 700 kilometers per hour towards the island of Sri Lanka and India, which we will talk about in the next 2 parts of our series. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for your unceasing interest in this series. We make it for you with our best efforts, and we'll continue to bring you as much information as possible. Thanks for liking and subscribing, and see you at the next video.